A female soldier just wanted to settle into her seat and enjoy her journey home, but when a man stared at her and said she couldn't sit there, the reason behind his statement left everyone shocked. Emily, wearing her worn military uniform and with a face that showed days without sleep, walked thoughtfully through the boarding gate with her carry-on luggage. "Thank God I'm finally leaving. All I want is to take a bath," the woman thought, imagining herself at home in a bathtub full of bubbles, enjoying a moment alone in the comfort of her own space. This was a stark contrast to her daily life in the US Army, where she endured intense training, strict diets, and exhausting missions that drained every drop of sweat from her body. With each step down the aisle toward the aircraft, she felt the weight of uninterrupted weeks of service. As she entered the plane, her tired eyes scanned the rows of seats, catching the curious glances of other passengers as she passed through first class. For a moment, she paused, admiring the spacious leather seats. "Ah, it would be a dream to stretch my legs here," she thought, feeling every fiber of her body pleading for some rest. However, Emily continued on, recalling the field. Distant sounds of conflict and the biting cold in the trenches. All she longed for at that moment was the peace of her home and the comforting embrace of her bed. As she reached the back of the plane, the woman searched for her seat in the economy class, already imagining the brief relief the flight would bring. She stored her small carry-on bag in the overhead compartment and then sat down, settling in and closing her eyes. "Ah, finally," she whispered softly. It wasn't the luxurious first-class seat she had dreamed of, as her modest salary would never allow her to enjoy such a trip. But being able to rest her back against something other than cold, hard sandbags was the best feeling in the world for this exhausted officer. At that moment, she could already envision how well she would use her 4 weeks of leave, sleeping in her bed, on the couch, and maybe even at the kitchen table. All Emily wanted was to clear her mind of the whirlwind of emotions and worries that her intense days had imposed on her and simply be able to sleep. The woman was nearly dozing off, which gives you an idea of just how exhausted she was, and only a few minutes had passed since she sat down. Suddenly, her brief rest was interrupted. "Excuse me, miss, but you can't sit here," a voice echoed. The voice she heard was calm yet firm, causing her to quickly open her eyes, startled. When the soldier snapped back to reality, she saw a man standing in front of her, dressed in a suit with perfect posture and a serious expression, watching her closely. Feeling somewhat irritated, Emily responded, "Excuse me, what do you mean I can't sit here? I have my ticket and this is my seat." She was already pulling out her ticket to confirm that she was indeed in the right place. As she realized everything was in order, she extended the ticket toward the man, but he didn't move to take it. Instead, he remained standing, blocking her path with a forced politeness. A wave of frustration mixed with confusion washed over the soldier. "What's going on here? Why won't this stranger leave me alone in my corner?" she wondered to herself. Her exhaustion began to give way to a sense of injustice. She thought of all the sleepless nights and the sacrifices she had made for her country, and now she was being prevented from returning home. The plane started to fill up, and some passengers cast curious glances at the scene unfolding. The officer, with a mix of fatigue and determination, confronted the man. There was something in his gaze that suggested this wasn't just a simple misunderstanding. But why wouldn't this man let her sit there if she was in the correct seat? What was the problem, really? "As I said, you can't sit here," the man reiterated, his soft voice contrasting sharply with the firmness of his words. The tension in the air was palpable as she, still seated, stared intently at the man standing in the narrow aisle of the plane. His blue eyes flashed with indignation under the cabin's soft lighting. The man, who she guessed to be around 45 years old, maintained an almost provocatively calm demeanor, On the other hand, the woman, whose patience was hanging by a thread, responded sharply, her exhaustion evident in her tone. "But I have the right to be here like anyone else. This is my seat." Her voice echoed, filled with a mix of fatigue and frustration. The confusion began to draw the attention of other passengers, with murmurs and curious glances directed at the unfolding scene. Some exchanged whispers, questioning the reason for this unusual interaction. The soldier could feel the weight of their gazes, but her determination as an officer did not waver. The flight attendants, alerted by the situation, quickly made their way to the back of the plane. They arrived with a look of concern, asking if everything was all right. "No, everything is not all right," Emily replied, her voice rising in tone and intensity. "This man is preventing me from sitting in my seat, and I don't understand why." The man in the suit, who had until now remained a statue of calm, continued to stand firm. He simply watched, allowing the woman to voice her indignation without interrupting or reacting. His eyes revealed no emotion, making it impossible to discern his intentions. Among the passengers, the atmosphere was one of discomfort and curiosity. Some stood up to get a better view, while others murmured among themselves, speculating about the nature of the conflict. "I fought for this country, spent weeks in unimaginable conditions, and now I'm being treated this way on my own journey home," she said, her voice heavy with emotion and sadness as she recalled everything she had endured in recent months. For those unaware, the life of a military officer is far from easy. Although they are often seen as heroes, the reality is frequently marked by overwhelming emotional challenges. They are tested daily, not just physically but also psychologically, facing situations that push them to the limits of human endurance. Many carry the burden of having to harm others, a reality that runs contrary to our nature as human beings, leading some to the brink of wanting to give up. It's not an easy life, as the pain and trauma of conflicts echo far beyond the battlefield, haunting their souls and hearts. That's why the woman felt so deeply hurt at that moment, by this simple act of a stranger not allowing her to take her seat. All she wanted was peace, just that, peace. The man, for a moment, he remained still as her words, heavy with emotion, echoed through the cabin, resonating deeply with anyone present. It was easy to feel the weight of what the officer was going through, and he watched her with an inscrutable expression, as if he knew something the others did not. Despite the growing tension around him, he remained calm, almost serene. Finally, one of the flight attendants approached him, gently tapping his shoulder. "Sir, please return to your seat in first class. We're about to take off and we need everyone to be seated," she said, her voice a mix of respect and urgency. Emily, now a swirl of irritation and anger, couldn't stop wondering why he was doing this. "What does he want with me? Some first-class guy? What on earth is going on?" she thought, visibly agitated. She looked him up and down and then shouted, "So you're one of those rich people who thinks they can control everything, huh?" Her voice dripped with indignation. "Why are you bothering me here in economy class? What does it matter to you where I sit? Can't you just tell me?" The man, who had maintained a stoic demeanor until then, finally broke his silence with a surprising revelation. "I'd like you to come with me to first class," he said, looking at her directly. Emily stared directly into the man's eyes, unable to believe what she was hearing. Everyone around them was equally shocked by his words. "Are you crazy?" she thought, completely confused by the situation. She looked at him, not understanding, and then he explained, "You can't sit here, not because you don't deserve it, but because you deserve so much more. You are incredibly important to our country, and an officer like you shouldn't be in economy class after everything you've done for us." A murmur spread among the passengers, with some nodding in agreement. Words of support and recognition began to ripple through the cabin. "I bought a first-class ticket for you. I've been waiting for you since you boarded," the man revealed, his tone filled with respect and admiration. This revelation left Emily stunned. She had expected just another exhausting and uncomfortable flight, but now she found herself at the center of an extraordinary situation. Looking around, she saw the faces of strangers, filled with gratitude and admiration. Some passengers even started to applaud, acknowledging her sacrifice and bravery. "Come with me, you won't regret it," the man in the suit said, turning and heading towards the front of the plane, accompanied by the flight attendants. Feeling slightly uncomfortable and still trying to process this unexpected turn of events, Emily stood up and followed him. Emily followed the man down the aisle of the plane, now under the applause and respectful gazes of the passengers. Each step felt surreal, as if she were in a dream. "You deserve it, dear," some said. The man guided her to the first-class section, where a spacious and comfortable seat awaited her. Still feeling out of place and confused but deeply grateful, Emily took her seat. She looked at the man who had completely transformed her journey. The moment she sat down, it was as if a rainbow had burst in the sky. "My God, this is so comfortable," she thought to herself. She was still trying to process the sudden change in her circumstances. The luxurious seat was a relief for her body, worn out from the rigors of combat. Every muscle relaxed, something she hadn't felt in a long time. Although she still felt a bit embarrassed by all the attention, the sense of comfort was undeniable. Beside her sat Michael, the enigmatic man who had brought her there. He introduced himself, and Emily thanked him for his generosity, her curiosity mixed with a slight sense of distrust. Then the soldier confronted him. "Why did you do this for me? Why did you buy a first-class seat for a stranger?" Michael looked at her, his eyes revealing an emotional depth that surprised her. There was sincerity and respect that she rarely encountered. "You really don't know, do you?" he murmured, as if about to reveal something important. "A secret." She shook her head, her confusion clear on her face. Michael then pulled a photograph from his coat pocket. The picture showed a little girl, about 6 years old, with a radiant smile that seemed to light up the cabin. Emily felt a pang in her heart as she looked at the photo. The girl wasn't unfamiliar to her. A familiar feeling washed over her, one she couldn't quite explain. "This is my daughter, Sufi," Michael began, his voice thick with emotion. "And you, Officer Emily, are the reason she's alive today." Michael's words sent a chill down Emily's spine. She looked at the photo and then back at the man, trying to piece together a memory that felt both distant and close. "No," she said, her voice trembling with surprise and confusion. "How am I the reason she's alive?" As Michael spoke, Emily's mind traveled back in time to a day that now seemed like it had happened just yesterday. It was 2 years ago, in a war-torn city in a distant country, where the sounds of explosions and sirens were the daily soundtrack of despair. On that particular day, the sky was overcast, and the air was thick with the smell of smoke and fear. Emily and her team were cautiously making their way through pothole-ridden streets, alert to any signs of danger, when suddenly, a deafening explosion shattered the silence. The enemy had bombarded a building, and a nearby structure had been hit, its walls collapsing like a house of cards under the impact. Amidst the dust and debris, a faint and desperate cry caught the woman's attention. "Oh my God! Is anyone still alive in there?" her colleagues shouted. It was a little girl trapped on the second floor of the building, crying for help from a broken window. Without hesitation, Emily dashed toward the building, her heart pounding with each step. "Stay here. I'm going to find her," she yelled to her team, ignoring their concerned protests. The interior was a scene of chaos, with chunks of concrete, broken glass, and shattered furniture scattered everywhere. The officer climbed the trembling stairs, acutely aware of the danger that the building might collapse entirely. Upon reaching the second floor, she saw the little girl, who appeared to be around 4 years old, with her large eyes filled with tears and fear. The girl's mother was motionless, buried under the debris, a cruel fate that tragically proved fatal. "It's going to be all right, I promise," Emily said, trying to mask her own fear with a calm voice. "I'll get you out of here, sweetie." The trembling child reached out her little hands towards Emily. Gently, Emily picked her up, feeling the girl's heart beating against hers. She carefully retraced her steps down the unstable stairs. Every moment felt like an eternity of tension and fear. Having managed to escape the crumbling building, Emily handed the little girl over to a field medic, her heart still racing from the adrenaline. What she didn't realize was that the child was Sufi, the daughter of a wealthy businessman who was in the United States at the time of the bombing. The poor father was devastated, unable to protect his family or evacuate his wife and daughter before the war began. Michael was nearly overwhelmed when he received the news of his wife's death, but when he learned that his daughter had survived thanks to the bravery of a determined officer, he vowed to find that hero. Over the past 2 years, he had been searching for information about Emily with the aim of locating her one day to express his gratitude. So, upon learning that she would be returning home by plane, the millionaire purchased a first-class ticket as a token of thanks. Emily was stunned, now understanding the full extent of her actions that day and the chain of events that led to this astonishing moment on the plane. "You did so much more than your job for me," the millionaire said. "You gave my daughter a second chance at life, and I needed to tell you this personally." The officer was overwhelmed with indescribable emotion as the plane soared through the sky. Emily reflected on the twists of fate, as Michael, seated beside her, broke the silence with an even more astonishing revelation. "Sufi has always wanted to meet the brave woman who saved her," he said, his eyes shining with gratitude and admiration. "She constantly asks about you." The thought of meeting the little girl she had rescued warmed Emily's heart. The idea of completing this circle in her life seemed deeply fulfilling. "I'd love to meet her," Emily responded, a smile forming on her lips. In the following weeks, during her vacation, Emily met with Sufi and Michael several times. Each encounter was a discovery, an intertwining of lives brought together by fate in an unexpected way. Sufi was a cheerful, energetic child, and every moment with her served as a vivid reminder of life's preciousness. Michael, for his part, turned out to be a man with a big heart, whose strength and kindness went beyond his successful businessman facade. As the days went by, Emily found herself growing attached not only to the little girl, but also to Michael. What began as a connection born of gratitude and admiration gradually evolved into something deeper, marked by long conversations, laughter, and moments of shared silence. Discovering a connection neither had anticipated, love blossomed between Emily and Michael, defying the odds. Emily, a military officer spending months on overseas missions, and Michael, a successful businessman, found in each other a safe haven and a home. Over time, the unexpected happened. They decided to marry. The news was met with joy by Sufi, who adored Emily and longed for a complete family once more. Emily's life was infused with new meanings. Video calls with her family during her missions became the highlights of her days, a reminder of the love and life waiting for her back home. When she returned, the happiness was palpable. Sufi would run into her arms, and Michael would embrace her with a love that went beyond words. They were an unlikely family brought together by extraordinary circumstances. So, as Emily sat in her garden gazing at the stars, she reflected on the incredible journey life had given her. She had found love, family, and a home in the most unexpected places. Holding Michael's hand and hearing the laughter of their little girl, she knew that every challenge and sacrifice had been worth it. If you enjoyed this story, you'll likely find the next video appearing on your screen just as moving. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, give us a like, and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. A big hug, and see you in the next exciting story.